When Nebuchadnezzar encountered Jesus, three miraculous truths revealed that transform everything. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, besieged Jerusalem and took some of the vessels of the house of God to the land of Shinar. Babylon, a kingdom adorned with the splendor of the hanging gardens and fierce in its power, loomed large over the ancient world. Yet, during these tumultuous times, amidst whispers of dissent that filled the air like smoke, the great king was to encounter truths that would shake the very foundations of his reign. When the sun dipped below the horizon, Nebuchadnezzar lay awake, his heart troubled. A strange dream had gripped him, a vision of a colossal statue towering in the night. Its head gleamed with gold, promising opulence and power. Its chest and arms shone with silver, signifying strength yet to wane. Its belly and thighs glimmered with bronze, symbolizing conquest. And its legs, strong yet fragile, were of iron, fortified but ending in feet mixed with clay. Each component held deeper meanings that echoed in the chambers of his mind. Upon waking, the weight of the dream hung heavy. He summoned the magicians, enchanters, and sorcerers of Babylon, demanding not only the interpretation but the very content of his dream. Yet despair filled the throne room as none could unveil the mystery. It was then that Daniel, a young Hebrew captive, was brought forth. Daniel, filled with wisdom and the spirit of the holy God, stood before Nebuchadnezzar, a beacon of faith amidst tremors of fear. As Daniel stood before the great king, he uttered with divine authority, "The great God has made known to the king what shall be after this." He recounted the dream, revealing the rise and fall of empires. But then came the revelation of a kingdom that would never end, a stone cut from a mountain without human hands that would crush all preceding kingdoms. This was not merely about power but a prophecy that pointed toward the eternal reign of the Messiah. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. But how swiftly pride can reign. In a moment of arrogance, Nebuchadnezzar commanded a golden statue to be erected on the plains of Dura, compelling all to worship it, forgetting the God who had just revealed the truth to him. The music played, and the masses bowed. Yet 3 steadfast men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, stood firm in their faith, refusing to yield to the golden idol. Fueled by rage, Nebuchadnezzar ordered them cast into the fiery furnace. The flames roared, yet as he watched, astonishment washed over him. Amidst the fire walked 4 figures unbound and unharmed, the 4th appearing like a son of the gods. Nebuchadnezzar's heart quaked with fear and wonder, for in that moment, he glimpsed the Almighty's power. Would his heart be softened by the sight of God's deliverance? As he approached the furnace, Nebuchadnezzar stood at a crossroads. Could he comprehend the depth of God's sovereignty? The king faced the ultimate question. Would he recognize the true authority of the God who reveals, saves, and transforms? As the flames flickered, the story deepened, leaving the divine mystery of God's plan to unfold before him and beckoning readers to follow into the next chapter of this striking saga. In the aftermath of the miraculous deliverance of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Nebuchadnezzar was shaken to his core. The king ceased his furious wrath, awed by the sight of the unscathed men walking in the flames, their companions shining brightly amid the fire, as if divinely sent. With trembling hands and a voice barely above a whisper, he proclaimed, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants, who trusted in him and set aside the king's command." The words spilled forth from his lips, echoing through the royal chambers, a proclamation of reverence for the God of Israel. A flicker of faith ignited within him. "Therefore I make a decree," he continued, growing bolder, "that any people, nation, or language that speaks anything against the God of Daniel shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses laid in ruins. For there is no other God who is able to rescue in this way." His heart, once hardened by pride, began to soften under the weight of the Almighty's revelation, a testament to the divine authority declared through his captives, that as the flames died down and the people dispersed, Daniel remained before the king, a humble servant now becoming a trusted advisor. In the silence that cloaked the royal hall, Nebuchadnezzar turned his gaze to Daniel and inquired, "Your God reveals secrets. What is this truth that I cannot grasp?" With a heart laid open to God, Daniel replied, "O king, the dream and the interpretation have been given to you for a purpose. God has laid before you the rise and fall of kingdoms, but also a promise of the ultimate sovereignty that will be established through the stone, which represents an everlasting kingdom." The weight of Daniel's words sank deep into Nebuchadnezzar, for he sensed a greater purpose beyond his own realm. Night after night, he revisited the vision, trying to fathom its meaning, desiring to understand the dignity of the stone that would one day become the cornerstone of hope. Yet, the burden of his convictions pulled heavy at his heart. As the sun set, whispers circled in the high court's talk of a mighty king who would come to save, who would defeat death and sin. Nebuchadnezzar pondered this, a yearning stirring within him. Could it be true? Was there a new kingdom on the horizon, one that would transcend his power, his glories? Troubling thoughts swirled like a tempest, and once again, Nebuchadnezzar called upon the wise men of Babylon, desperate to understand the path his kingdom would take. He told them, "What shall this mean for my reign? Shall I be cast aside for one greater? I must know the end from the beginning." And so, with the king's heart aching beneath layers of pride and fear, his soul began to unravel, pulled taut by God's undying call. As he grappled with divine whispers, a dream emerged, this time a vast, restless sea raged in his mind, waves crashing in fury. What lay beneath the tumult? A mystery ensued. What did he hear beneath the roaring? Little did he know, the answer would come in a way he never anticipated, a revelation that could reshape not merely Babylon but all of history. For in the depths of his turmoil, the stirrings of God's sovereign plan began to take shape, and Nebuchadnezzar would soon find himself standing upon the threshold of transformation. Yet in all this, a question lingered. Could he perceive the divine beckoning amidst earthly grandeur? Would his heart finally yield to the one true God? The truth awaited beyond the shadows, a revelation that would lead him ever closer to God's glorious purpose. In the stillness of the night, as the flickering torches illuminated the walls of the palace, Daniel remained by Nebuchadnezzar's side. A contemplative silence enveloped the room, for the weight of what had transpired lingered in the air. The king, restless and fearful, looked up at the man of God and said, "Tell me, Daniel, what shall become of this dream? What does this ever-turning sea portend for my reign?" Daniel's heart swelled with compassion, for he knew the king's fears were now entangled with the divine. "O king," he began, "the visions that torment you are a reflection of God's sovereign hand. The sea you see thrashing is not unlike the hearts of men. It rages with conflicts and desires, yet it is a vessel through which the Almighty prepares a way for his purpose to unfold. Speak plainly," Nebuchadnezzar demanded, his voice rising with urgency. "What is the meaning of these surging waves? Your reign, O king, is but one part of a greater narrative. The waters you behold represent nations and kingdoms, rising and falling at the whisper of the Lord's command." Daniel explained gently, "Just as the waves come crashing, so shall mighty nations be brought low. But hear this, it is the stone cut without hands that shall crush all these kingdoms, establishing a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, an everlasting dominion that will break all dominions beneath it." The king's heart quaked at Daniel's words. Could such a stone indeed exist? To think that his powerful reign, built on the fervor of man's ambition, could be overshadowed by a divine purpose filled him with awe and dread. A moment of silence fell, and the only sound was the rustle of the king's garments as he pondered the weighty truth. "Tell me more," Nebuchadnezzar urged, drawn deeper into the mystery of the God who delivered his servants from the fire. "What must I do to stay steadfast in the tide of his purpose?" Daniel, sensing the shifting of the king's spirit, spoke with earnestness. "Humble yourself before the Lord, seek his ways, and acknowledge his sovereignty. He opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Do not let fear of the unknown harden your heart, for the God who rescues from fire is the same who brings understanding from chaos. A flicker of hope ignited in Nebuchadnezzar's heart, but fear lingered, tempting him to cling to his worldly power. In that moment, the king found himself wrestling internally. Could he truly surrender to a God he had only just begun to recognize? Days turned to weeks as Nebuchadnezzar sought wisdom among his advisors, wrestling with the implications of the dreams. The visions haunted him, ever present as he gazed upon his empire. But even as power surrounded him, a new thought arose, one of wonder. Could he yield to the one who is sovereign over all kingdoms? As the sun set one fateful evening, Nebuchadnezzar summoned Daniel once more. The stone you described haunts my soul, for I can feel its weight upon my heart. What then is its nature? What does this mean for the destiny of my kingdom? With prophetic insight, Daniel replied, O king, the stone represents a savior, a redeemer sent to break the chains of sin and to bring forth a new covenant to all who would believe. He will reign over all creation, and his kingdom shall endure forever. This stone is not merely a future promise. It is the very foundation upon which your understanding must rest. The king drew a shaky breath, his heart torn between the allure of his earthly reign and the beckoning call of eternity. As those words hung in the air, a divine tension enveloped the chamber. The king's path stood before him, shrouded in divine mystery, and the haunting question reverberated through his soul. Would he step into the light of understanding, or retreat into the shadows of self-preservation? For unbeknownst to him, God's sovereign plan was weaving through time and history, and the day was drawing near when Nebuchadnezzar would be confronted not only with dreams but with his divine purpose fulfilled through the coming of the stone, the very cornerstone of faith, the hope of nations who would soon transform his kingdom and the world forever. As dawn broke over Babylon, the sun cast its golden rays upon the great city. Yet within the heart of Nebuchadnezzar, a tumultuous storm brewed unmatched by any earthly tempest. He rose from his slumber, the weight of Daniel's words enveloping him like a mantle of sacrifice, stirring both fear and hope within the quiet of his chamber. The king sat upon his throne, a stark reminder of authority, yet the echo of a deeper authority pulsed in his heart. Is it possible, he pondered, that a stone born of divine promise could indeed conquer my realm? Could it transform my very soul? And as he contemplated, the spirit of pride stirred within him, whispering insidious doubts. Your kingdom is unparalleled in strength. You are the master of your own fate. But countering this temptation, a voice as soft as a whisper, yet strong as a fortress, broke through. Remember the lesson of the furnace, where faith triumphed amidst fire. Then came the voices of the wise men of Babylon, seeking their place before the king. O great king, they proclaimed, your kingdom flourishes amidst peace, and we must preserve this. The omens have changed, and your dreams indicate a tumult coming upon the nations. We must act swiftly. With a heavy heart, Nebuchadnezzar dismissed them, recognizing their words as empty whispers in the presence of divine revelation. He recalled the risk taken by Daniel and his companions, how their steadfast faith led them through the flames unharmed. Respect touched his spirit, as the heavenly hand guiding those faithful men was now beckoning at the door of his own heart. Days turned into a week, and the king's struggle grew fierce. He ventured into the temple of Marduk, seeking assurance from his own gods. Yet a veil of darkness shrouded the sacred halls, leaving him restless and ever more aware of his inadequacy. The silent deities offered no guidance, merely echoes of a past that could not save him. In desperation, he sought again the man of God. Daniel, he implored, I sense a greater weight upon my spirit. What shall I do that the shadow of this stone might fall upon my heart and redeem my reign? Daniel stood before him, eyes filled with divine wisdom and compassion. O king, heed my counsel. Acknowledge the one true God, the Lord of heaven. Confess your pride and your ways, and pray that your heart may be transformed. It is not in the strength of your empire that your victory lies, but in the humble surrender to the Creator of all. As they spoke, the king's countenance changed, flickering between the world he knew and the divine invitation before him. In that moment, Nebuchadnezzar grasped the gravity of faith's call, the humble surrender that would lead to true exaltation from the depths of despair. Then, lo, there was a stirring as angels of the Lord stood at the gates of heaven, ready to witness the king's decision. The air thickened with divine expectation, a moment destined to alter the course of history unveiled before him. That I end this tender balance of dread and hope. Nebuchadnezzar cast his gaze outward from the palace, where life pulsed in vivid hues. Suddenly, it became clear. The stone would not merely overthrow the coming of the Savior, signified restoration, reconciliation, and the birth of hope across his kingdom. Yet, O Daniel, he murmured with newfound courage, what if I stand alone against a tide of skepticism? Will I not be mocked by my own court? The prophet smiled knowingly. The greatest battles are won not in our strength but in our surrender. Fear not the disapproval of men, for the applause of heaven shall await you. With that, Nebuchadnezzar's heart surged, ignited by the truth of his position under the sovereign hand of God. In the deeper fabric of his spirit, the question lingered, would he be the king who bowed low before the stone, or stand opposed as kingdoms would fall? Unbeknownst to him, the kingdom of Babylon was but a thread in God's grand tapestry. As Nebuchadnezzar took a step closer to surrender, the world braced itself for the miraculous genesis of faith to emerge in a heart once hardened by pride. The time was drawing near for God's promise to ripple across the earth, for through the layers of history, the stone destined to become the cornerstone would soon rise to shatter every stronghold and usher in the glory of a new covenant. In the crucible of this relationship, the king's journey would reveal a mighty truth: no one is beyond the reach of divine grace. As the sun set upon the city of Babylon, its light waning into gentle hues of orange and crimson, a restlessness stirred within Nebuchadnezzar. The world outside continued its bustling rhythm, yet in his soul, a solemn anticipation grew. The burdens of kingship weighed heavy upon him, and each heartbeat reverberated with the truth of Daniel's words: the time for decision had come. O Lord, he prayed in silence, drawing strength from the depths of his spirit. If indeed you would grant me strength to bow, let your will be known in my life. The king contemplated the fate that loomed as he sought divine clarity. He remembered the faces of Daniel and his companions, their unwavering faith amidst persecution. Each act of courage they manifested reverberated as declarations of God's supremacy even within the mightiest empire. A thought flickered in him: what if I were to mirror their faith? Would I then walk a path that would change my legacy forever? In the stillness of that moment, an angel of the Lord descended, radiant with glory, illuminating the chamber with divine presence. The air shimmered, and Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face before the messenger, overwhelmed by his own insignificance yet filled with inexplicable hope. What do you require of me, mighty one? He whispered, his heart thrumming like the wings of a dove. Rise, O king, the angel answered, for the Lord of hosts has seen your turmoil. He is calling you to turn toward him. Speak, and let the heart of Babylon transform. As Nebuchadnezzar rose, a warmth enveloped him, and the knowledge of God's mercy began to wash over his troubled soul, the very mercy that had spared Daniel and his friends from the flames. He knew within that this path of humility was fraught with perilous change, yet such is the cost of true faith. With renewed determination, he summoned his nobles and wise men, wearied from days of idleness in seeking knowledge of the heavens. Through every glance exchanged and whispered mutterings, anticipation danced among them. Nebuchadnezzar's voice rang clear, people of Babylon, hear me. I have seen the power of the God of Daniel, and behold, I shall surrender my heart to him, that he may govern not only my reign but also my spirit. Confusion washed over the court, disbelief mingled with astonishment. Could their king truly abandon the traditions of centuries? One noble, known for his rivalry, rose to retort, Your Majesty, abandon the ways of our fathers? Surely this cannot be the path to glory. But the king, emboldened by divine presence, responded, If true strength lies in power alone, then our kingdom is built on sand. Yet, If faith in the living God brings forth restoration, then let us forge a new legacy rooted in his truth. As dawn approached once more, the king knelt. His crown laid before him, a bold act of surrender echoed within the towering walls of the palace. I choose faith, O Lord. Reign in my heart, and I shall lead my people to the living water. And as he prayed, the heavens trembled and the earth shook, for all of creation took notice. A dream unspooled into reality, the stone spoken of would soon begin to establish its reign, prepared to crush every prideful heart. You are no longer alone, Nebuchadnezzar, whispered the angel, for your confession of faith has been heard. The sacred stone shall roll forth, and through you shall nations witness God's mighty hand. As you bow this day, so too shall a future arise, and the heavens shall rejoice. With the dawn breaking brighter than ever, Nebuchadnezzar raised his gaze, ignited by the sweet promise of an unfathomable grace, a grace meant not only for kings and kingdoms but for all who would dare to believe. The hour was drawing near, and with it the unveiling of God's sovereign plan. The very stone that would crush kingdoms was shaping the heart of a king, calling forth an era of hope that would span generations. What new wonders God would reveal next, and how would they unfold in the hearts of those watching? As day broke and light filtered through the vast panes of the great palace, Nebuchadnezzar felt the weight of a new dawn, one not shaped by his will alone, but under the sovereignty of the Most High God. In his heart, a flame of faith flickered brightly, fueled by the angel's solemn promises. But trouble brewed within Babylon, as murmurs of disbelief coursed through the courts like a raging river. Kings from lands afar who once bowed before the glimmering idols of gold now watched expectantly from their distant thrones, their gaze focused on the unfolding events within Nebuchadnezzar's realm. Is it possible, they whispered among themselves, that the king will venerate a god unseen, whose servants have defied our might? As this discord lingered, Nebuchadnezzar convened his council, the wise men, enchanters, magicians, and astrologers. He stood before them, transformed from the king who had ordered burning pyres to a man seeking divine guidance. I bring forth a decree, he called, his voice steady but filled with solemnity. We shall turn away from the worship of our gods made of stone and metal, and instead, I call upon each of you to seek the true God, the God of Daniel. A profound silence fell over the assembly, their expressions a mix of shock and incredulity. One advisor, a diviner named Belshazzar, stepped forward, trembling. My king, have you truly considered the implications? Are we to forsake the traditions that have defined us throughout the ages? What might come of this? In response, Nebuchadnezzar's gaze burned with divine conviction. Shall we continue to stand in the shadow of what is false, relinquishing the chance for the truth to take root among us? Is not the world filled with wonders we have yet to behold? I say unto you, let us be bold in faith, for the God of Daniel is the God of miracles, and he alone is worthy of our devotion. As his words settled in, a murmur of unease rippled through the gathered crowd. Yet, amongst the dissent, a few loyal servants of the king, notably Daniel and his companions, felt their spirits lift. They clasped their hands and prayed for favor, silently requesting the Lord to intervene in this fragile moment of faith. Suddenly, the air thickened with tension. A bright light broke forth from the heavens, illuminating the chamber as the angel of the Lord reappeared, radiant and awe-inspiring. The voice that echoed bore the authority of the Almighty. Nebuchadnezzar, the time has come for the fullness of God's plan to unfold. This act of faith shall bring forth consequences both good and dire. Be steadfast and watch, for the sacred stone destined to establish the kingdom is about to stir among your people. The king, trembling at the pronouncement, lifted his voice above the whispers. We shall not fear what lies ahead. In faith we stand united. Let it be known that we shall seek the God of Israel, and through him, the very foundations of Babylon shall tremble. But as hope ignited hearts, shadows loomed in the distance. The jealous nobles, unwilling to relinquish their power, plotted in the darkness, scheming to thwart the king's newfound purpose. Let us test his resolve. One hissed, churning with bitter envy. We shall challenge his faith in the face of adversity. And while Nebuchadnezzar's heart soared with the promise of God's favor, uncertainty flickered around him like a candle in the wind. Would the king's faith withstand the trials ahead? Would Babylon rise or fall in the light of this divine encounter? As the council shifted and murmurs spread like wildfire, a singular truth began to emerge. A transformation was coming, not only for Nebuchadnezzar but for the city itself. What struggles would lay in wait for those who dared to follow? For in the heart of conflict, God's sovereign plan was already at work, weaving together destinies unseen, an arc of redemption stretching far beyond Babylon, reaching to all nations. What fate awaited the kingdom that bowed before the sacred stone? The next moments would unveil the divine tapestry of God's intentions, as hidden paths of glory awaited those with hearts open to his call. As the sun reached its zenith, casting shadows that danced along the stone walls of the palace, Nebuchadnezzar gathered his council once more. This time, he looked upon them not as a ruler imposing his will, but as a man humbled before the power of the Most High. His heart beat with an urgency born from the divine visitation, his spirit aflame with expectations of the unimaginable. "I have called you here for a purpose," he declared, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. "Our land stands at a threshold. The sacred stone is stirring. We must be prepared to receive its promise." The wise men exchanged glances, confusion and doubt swirling within them. "What is this sacred stone of which you speak, O king?" Belshazzar questioned, still clutching the remnants of his former allegiance to the idols of Babylon. "It is the emblem of God's authority," Nebuchadnezzar replied, a fervor rising within him. "It shall be the cornerstone of a new kingdom, a kingdom that transcends our earthly power, destined to be established in righteousness." Yet in the shadows, the discontented nobles conspired. They plotted to undermine the king's resolve, reminded that their grip upon the kingdom trembled with this new spiritual reality. "Let us devise a proclamation," one muttered with dark intentions, "that all may be compelled to bow before the image we have set, lest they face the fires of the furnace. Then we shall see where this new devotion leads him." As night fell upon Babylon, the royal decree was issued, declaring that at the sound of the trumpet, all must bow to the golden image. The very air seemed to thicken with impending dread, and yet, a divine whisper coursed through the hearts of Daniel and his companions. "We shall not bow," Shadrach spoke with conviction, his eyes aflame with resolute faith. "For our God is a consuming fire, and we shall not turn to the devices of men." The day of reckoning arrived, and as the people gathered in the shadow of the towering idol, the musicians struck their chords. The banners waved in the wind, declaring allegiance to an empty promise, while a profound silence shrouded three courageous hearts, unwavering amidst the clamor around them. When the sound resounded, the whole assembly bowed down except for the three. Their stand was defiant, though the flames of the furnace awaited any who would disobey. The news reached the ears of the king, and wrath filled his heart. Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, a tumult of emotions battling in his chest. "Is it true?" he thundered, his voice echoing through the hall. "Will you not worship the image I have set before you? If you do not, you shall be cast into the fiery furnace." With fiery courage, they answered, "O king, we have no need to defend ourselves before you. Our God whom we serve is able to deliver us, and even if he does not, we will not bow to your image." Facing the wrath of the king, hope flickered in the hearts of Daniel's friends. Their faith shone as a beacon in a storm, calling forth the promise of divine intervention. As Nebuchadnezzar's anger boiled over, he commanded the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter, sealing the fate of the defiant trio. Yet even amidst the flames, a sedate peace descended upon them, for they knew the Lord was present. As they were bound and cast into the searing heat, the very air shimmered as if heaven was preparing to break through. Then, an astonishing sight met the eyes of all who gazed within. Unharmed, they walked within the furnace, a fourth figure appearing among them, the likeness of the Son of God. As a chorus of angelic voices resonated, the hearts of observers began to tremble, not with fear, but with the dawning realization of God's sovereignty. What was unfolding was a divine tapestry, threads woven together by goddess promise and purpose, shaping destinies both near and far. Thus, in the echoes of struggle and the flickers of faith, a question lingered in the hearts of all. What new revelation was God preparing to unveil in the hearts of those who dared to stand firm? The heat of the furnace was but the beginning, for the sacred stone awaited its rightful place, poised to transform nations far beyond the borders of Babylon. As the radiant dawn broke over Babylon, a newfound anxiety gripped the heart of Nebuchadnezzar. For the emperor, the events of the previous day danced relentlessly in his mind, the sight of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego unscathed within the flames, emboldened by a presence divine. Would the glory of the Most High continue to be evident as he cast his gaze upon their boldness? The king could not shake the profound revelation that had steered the course of his soul. He paced the marble floors of his palace, restlessness churning within him, seeking understanding of the sacred stone and its intended purpose. "Bring me the captives," he commanded with a voice that alternated between authority and uncertainty. When Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stood before him once more, the king's eyes glistened with a mixture of awe and fear. "Surely, your God is a God of gods, and a Lord of kings," he proclaimed in astonishment, recalling the moment they had been preserved beneath the blazing inferno. "You have changed my heart. I desire to understand your faith." The three men stood resolute, their expressions unwavering, as they spoke collectively. "O King, we serve the living God, who is able to deliver and sustain us. He has shown his mercy, and it is our duty to testify to his wonders." A weighty silence enveloped the chamber, pregnant with divine anticipation. Perhaps in that moment, Nebuchadnezzar began to glimpse the very purpose of the sacred stone, a revelation meant not just for him, but for an entire empire in desperate need of redemption, a stone not of mere earthly composition, but one of eternal significance. "Would you tell me more?" Nebuchadnezzar urged, his heart troubled yet eager. "Know this," Meshach replied, his voice steady and calm. "The sacred stone represents a kingdom that shall never perish nor fade away. It is destined to crush the prideful edifices of men's hearts, carving out a new path for those who seek the truth. It is in this kingdom that the humble will be exalted, and the oppressed shall find refuge." Shadrach added, "In this kingdom, fear shall give way to faith, and love shall be the law." The sacred stone testifies to the coming of one who will reign in righteousness, the Messiah, who will consume all wickedness and establish peace. The king's heart raced as he listened, yet doubt lurked in corners of his mind. He thought of the opposition that whispered against the three, those who built their lives upon the shifting sands of power and pride. "But how can I trust in this unseen God when all I see are the glories of Babylon surrounding me?" Abednego stepped forward, his eyes reflecting the truth they spoke. "O King, what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. This sacred trust is a gift, and by faith we rely upon his sovereign plan. For it was through the flames he revealed his presence, a promise that sustains us even amidst the fiercest trials." In that moment, Nebuchadnezzar's heart broke, the walls of his own pride crumbling. He sensed the weight of his decisions pressing upon him. Was he ready to forsake the idols that blinded his people and embrace the very truth of the God who had delivered these faithful men from the fire? As the king attempted to make sense of such profound faith and divine revelation, a shift began to ripple through the court of Babylon. The treachery that had once dwelled within the hearts of his nobles was exposed, a dark undercurrent seeking to embolden their defiance against the divine. And so Nebuchadnezzar, caught in the midst of this divine intervention, rumbled with the question of nations yet to come. "What will become of my kingdom? Will my people turn to their Maker? Or will they remain shackled by the false idols crafted by their hands?" For in the face of such pivotal revelation, the sacred stone was not just a cornerstone of a new kingdom, but a harbinger of transformation set to unfold in waves across history, originating with a king faced by the God of all creation and his unwavering desire to reclaim what was lost. As the king grappled with this spiritual awakening, the sun crested higher amidst the towers of Babylon, illuminating the grand landscape of his kingdom, each brick symbolizing the pride of man, each shadow a potential stronghold against the Most High. Yet, in that moment, Nebuchadnezzar felt an unease within him, a stirring as if the very heavens were beckoning. "Call my dream interpreters and sages," he commanded, for the weight upon his heart demanded resolution. "There must be wisdom to guide my troubled spirit." With haste, the wise men of Babylon assembled, their faces lined with concern. Nebuchadnezzar, recalling his last disturbing dream, demanded anew, "Tell me the nature of my thoughts. I will not grant you favor until you unveil the steering of my soul." Yet as they began to speak, his mind raced with the implications of his previous encounters with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He saw now how the God they served was indeed a God that answered even the unspoken yearnings of the heart. "Your learned words hold no resolution for me," he declared, interrupting them. "You speak of earthly mysteries, but I seek the divine. I desire the counsel of the heavens, not the trickery of man." As the courtiers' murmurs filled the chamber, Nebuchadnezzar turned again to the three men. "O servants of the Most High, you who tread amidst the flames unharmed, pray, intercede for me. Speak the wisdom of your God. Reveal to me the path to peace." Shadrach stepped forth, his voice like a soft breeze breaking through a tempest. "O King, the God we serve desires a relationship of trust. He has shown you his power, yet it requires faith to unlock the depths of his purpose." "Faith," the king echoed, his heart pounding with an awareness of responsibility. "How can I lead this people if I do not understand his will?" "The first step is to lay down the idols," replied Abednego. "Turn away from the anger which demands you keep control, and instead bow before the one who holds your future. He reveals himself through humility and submission." With each word, the walls around Nebuchadnezzar's heart trembled. Memories flood through him, the people caught in their pursuits of vanity, the sorrows of disillusionment that climbed to the heavens like smoke that end that introspection. Another dream began to unfurl, echoing in the dark chambers of his heart, a vision not of destruction, but of hope, where a new kingdom arose, built upon trust in the sacred stone, a kingdom where the humble would reign. "Speak, noble hearts," he implored. "What is to become of me and mine? Will the one you speak of be able to conquer the nations?" "Yes," King Meshach spoke firmly, "for the sacred stone is not merely a structure. It is a living testament that will rise above the earthly realm, bearing witness to all mankind. It will overcome every kingdom that defies the sovereign plan." With newfound urgency, Nebuchadnezzar began issuing decrees across his land, proclaiming a fast, an invitation to turn to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, an act of faith he himself dared not yet fully embrace but hoped would stir in the hearts of his subjects. And as the echoes of his proclamations surged through Babylon, a divinely orchestrated wind whispered in the corners of his reign, hinting at the miraculous unfolding plan of God. Yet in the midst of such revelations, a shadow lurked, a faction of dissent emboldened by jealousy, ready to conspire against the light that shone from the captives. The king stood at a crossroads, unaware that the next days would usher in a turning of hearts, both his and of a great nation. What lies ahead would shape not only his destiny but the very fabric of faith in Babylon, a tale that would transcend beyond time itself, echoing through ages as the sacred stone began to draw nearer, heralding a purpose he could not yet fully comprehend. In the twilight of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, the time of reckoning arrived as divine purpose unfolded like the petals of a fragrant flower. The winds of change swept through Babylon, carrying with them the whispers of a kingdom yet to be established, a kingdom founded upon the faith of the sacred stone, the Messiah who would come to redeem and restore. As the king stood upon the balcony of his palace, overlooking the sprawling city that had flourished under his rule, contemplation washed over him like a gentle tide. "What is my legacy?" he murmured to himself, as if the very stones of Babylon could answer. He recalled the fiery hearts of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, their unwavering faith and the very God who had delivered them. Within him, a stirring of newfound humility began to take root, replacing the pride that had once ruled his heart with the light of divine revelation. Nebuchadnezzar knew that the people of Babylon had watched him grapple with faith and doubt, their ears attuned to the proclamations he had made in recent days, his call for unity in worshiping the true God. Yet opposition loomed heavy in the shadows, a reminder that bold declarations of faith could bear costly consequences. Will they stand beside me? He wondered, wrestling with the weight of vulnerability that hung heavily upon his crown. Then came the day when he would see the fruit of his conviction manifest. Nebuchadnezzar summoned all who dwelled in the city to gather before him in the vast plains of Dura, where the idol once stood a towering testament of worldly pride. His heart raced with both fear and anticipation as he prepared to speak the words that could alter the spiritual trajectory of an entire nation. "O people of Babylon," he called out, his voice echoing like thunder. "Hear me. The God of Daniel, whom my heart had once scorned, is not merely a deity to be revered in silence. He is the one who speaks truth into the chaos and brings forth hope in despair. I declare to you the greatness of the sacred stone, the Messiah who will establish a kingdom that will last forever." A murmur of confusion arose within the crowd, eyes darting among one another as the implications of his boldness sank in. Yet, amidst the struggle of disbelief, a flicker of faith ignited in the hearts of many as they witnessed a king unafraid to yield to the divine call. Quietly, the winds began to shift, as those once rigid in their hearts now dared to consider the possibility of the true God, the architect of their lives and the creator of the universe. Voices blended in unison, as the people began to chant, "Blessed be the God of Daniel, the one who saves." At that moment, a great light descended, illuminating the plains as if heaven had kissed the earth. Angels gathered in the unseen, and the presence of God enveloped the assembly, a living testament to his merciful reign. A sign that the sacred stone was at the door, ready to embolden them with faith. And as Nebuchadnezzar watched the transformation in the countenance of his people, his heart leapt within him. Conviction swept over him anew, a holy assurance that his surrender would yield not only personal redemption but the awakening of an entire kingdom. He felt his past weighed down by pride unraveling, replaced with the glory of humility. As the sun set upon that fateful day, Nebuchadnezzar fell to his knees, his crown laid upon the earth, and he prayed, "O Lord, reign in my heart, and lead these people to the beauty of your truth. From this day forth, let our lives be a testament to the power of your salvation." With that declaration, the sacred stone, the foundation of faith, was solidified in the hearts of many, ushering in a new era, a legacy not wrought with pride but one that echoed with the triumph of faith and unity in the living God. As the echoes of his proclamation traveled through the streets of Babylon, walls of doubt began to crumble, and the people united, emboldened by the Spirit. They gathered in prayer and worship, transforming the very fabric of their society. As one by one, hearts were drawn to the sacred stone that had become the cornerstone of hope. Thus, the transformation of Nebuchadnezzar and his kingdom became a cherished tale, reverberating through generations, a reminder that even the proudest of hearts can yield before the Almighty. The truth remained steadfast, that God's love knows no bounds and that his plans prevail, whether in the highest palaces or amongst the humble. And so diverged the narrative of the once proud king, the king who had encountered the living God. In surrendering to the sacred stone, he found not only restoration for his heart, but a legacy meant to transcend time, echoing through history to all who would dare to encounter the truth. Because of Nebuchadnezzar's journey, a ripple effect was ignited, drawing countless souls closer to the mercy and grace of the one who reigns forevermore. And these reflections, a call rings out to all who hear the story. Do not wait another moment. Embrace the truth. Subscribe immediately to the channel, and do not miss the next powerful biblical stories that will transform your life. Leave a like now to spread God's word through the algorithm. Comment below with your spiritual reflections and how this profound story impacted your faith. And lastly, share instantly with at least 5 friends who need to hear this powerful testimony of God's truth. The time for action is now, and only true believers understand the importance of supporting biblical content to reach more souls for Christ.